Hey guys, it's Owen from Wrestling Inc. back with another wrestling news roundup. Without any further ado, let's get into today's biggest stories in the world of professional wrestling. Sasha Banks and Naomi walk out of WWE during Monday Night Raw. Last night's WWE Raw kicked off with several new matches being announced, including a six-pack challenge to determine the number one contender for the Raw Women's Championship. The original match was supposed to see WWE Women's Tag Team Champions Naomi and Sasha Banks versus Asuka, Becky Lynch, Doudrop, and Nikki ASH to decide the new challenger to Bianca Belair. However, that match got abruptly changed early on in the show when Adam Pearce switched it to a singles match between Becky Lynch and Asuka to determine the number one contender. There wasn't much explanation given on the show itself, but new reports give some insight into what is going on backstage. PW Insider first reported that Sasha Banks apparently took issue with certain creative ideas pitched for last night's show. She requested a meeting with Vince McMahon, which she was granted, but when Vince wouldn't budge on his own creative vision, Banks took it upon herself to leave the arena. Her tag team partner and fellow women's tag team champion Naomi reportedly joined Sasha in exiting the building. This is especially peculiar considering that Naomi was actually booked to win the match and be Bianca Belair's new number one contender at Hell in a Cell, according to Fightful. Sasha Banks unfollowed a bunch of key WWE accounts on Twitter over the past few days. While this may or may not be related to her walking out of Monday's Raw, it's worth pointing out that the boss has unfollowed the handles of WWE Chairman Vince McMahon, Bayley, Becky Lynch, The Usos, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns. Banks is currently following only 6 accounts: Naomi, John Cena, Tamina Snuka, her cousin Snoop Dogg, and 2 fan accounts. WWE issued a statement to Wrestling Inc. shedding further light on the situation surrounding Sasha Banks and Naomi leaving WWE Raw abruptly. WWE says that Banks and Naomi relinquished their women's tag team titles and said they aren't respected as a tag team, and claimed they felt unsafe inside the ring with certain opponents before walking out. The full statement reads, quote, "When Sasha Banks and Naomi arrived at the arena this afternoon, they were informed of their participation in the main event of tonight's Monday Night Raw. During the broadcast, they walked into WWE Head of Talent Relations John Laurinaitis' office with their suitcases in hand, placed their tag team championship belts on his desk, and walked out. They claimed they weren't respected enough as tag team champions, even though they had 8 hours to rehearse and construct their match. They claimed they were uncomfortable in the ring with 2 of their opponents, even though they'd had matches with those individuals in the past with no consequence. Monday Night Raw is a scripted live TV show whose characters are expected to perform the requirements of their contract. We regret we were unable to deliver as advertised tonight's main event." WWE did mention that Banks and Naomi had left the building during the broadcast, with Corey Graves even saying, quote, "Sasha and Naomi unprofessionally left the arena" on commentary. Sasha Banks and Naomi's issues with WWE Creative were largely based around the direction of their tag team and the women's tag team division as a whole, according to Fightful Select. The report noted that Banks and Naomi were angling to work with Nikki ASH and Doudrop at the upcoming Hell in a Cell premium live event, but those pitches were shot down. There was also a pitch to have Nikki and Doudrop interfere in the planned Naomi vs Bianca Belair match at Hell in a Cell, which was also turned down. As noted in earlier reports, WWE Creative wanted Naomi and Banks to challenge Belair and Ronda Rousey for the Raw and SmackDown Women's titles respectively at Hell in a Cell. This is why Naomi was slated to win the planned 6-pack challenge to determine the number one contender to Belair's title. With Naomi and Sasha walking out of Raw, WWE was forced to have Asuka beat Becky Lynch in a singles match instead. WWE later announced that Asuka vs Belair would take place at the next premium live event. It was further noted by Fightful Select that Banks and Naomi, who were both part of the planned 6-pack challenge on Raw, were not to interact physically during the match. The working plan was for Naomi to pin Nikki, not Naomi pinning Sasha Banks, as was previously speculated. Those close to the situation also noted that Naomi and Banks didn't claim they didn't want to work with unsafe opponents, presumably Doudrop and Nikki, though that was implied in WWE's statement. Instead, Banks and Naomi were reportedly just focused on improving the women's tag team division. It was also noted that talent themselves hadn't heard that Sasha and Naomi considered anyone unsafe until WWE's statement was released. WWE talent also received the statement in their internal talent relations app. Meanwhile, WrestleVotes is reporting that the WWE statement regarding the Sasha Banks and Naomi walkout, quote, is just the baseline of the details, end quote. It was noted that the tension leading up to the walkout was palpable all day, with both wrestlers upset at something that transpired. Soon after the news broke of the Boss and Glow connection staging a walkout from Monday's Raw, a Twitter user who appears to be friends with Naomi provided details on the source of the wrestler's unhappiness with WWE creative. According to @Adidas_head88, who was followed by Naomi on Twitter, Sasha Banks and Naomi were upset that WWE didn't value their run as WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. The entire thread reads, quote, "You are approached in February as being put in a tag team after both being promised big feuds at WrestleMania. You bite the bullet and put everything you got into being a tag team. It works, you get over, win the titles at WrestleMania and become merch pushers. 5 weeks into your reign, you show up to live TV and ready to work. You are told you will be in the main event and you are happy. You both are then told that one of you will be going over from pinning the other. You have questions why that decision was made and how it helps you. You request a meeting with your boss to discuss it. Your boss takes the meeting and everything is actually going well. He understands your concerns. The meeting ends well and the match is told to be reconstructed. For some reason, producers get mad about it. You then ask, with one of your members going over, what happens to your titles. You are told basically that you will just be carrying the bouts. They want to use you both to help both women's champions get more over. Bianca versus Naomi, Sasha versus Ronda. Neither one of you will win the solo titles and you won't defend your tag titles until Money in the Bank. You ask for another meeting with your boss, but this time you're being called spoiled. A producer walks away screaming. He comes back and tells both of you to fix your attitudes. You have a brief meeting amongst yourselves and decide to stand up for yourselves. You go to another boss and make it clear you just have concerns. You ask why are we even in the match and why aren't other women in it? You ask why your titles have no stories for 2 months. Again, you are met with fix your attitudes. So after one final meeting with yourselves and asking others, you make the ultimate decision as a team. It's sad how one side is trying to create an effed up narrative. Also, it was asked why Nikki, ASH and Doudrop are in the match instead of starting their program tonight. Naomi nor Sasha talked down about being in the ring with either one. I don't know how that got flipped. After walking out during this week's WWE Raw, Sasha Banks has backstage heat according to Dave Meltzer on the latest edition of Wrestling Observer Radio. These feelings were passed on from people not in WWE management, but they also weren't aware of the full situation going on. Naomi's name was not mentioned, so it's unknown whether or not there are the same feelings towards her right now. Of course, the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions opted to leave the arena last night during WWE Raw, which changed the plans of the main event of the show. Originally, it was set to be a 6-pack match that featured both Sasha Banks and Naomi, where the winner earned a title shot against Bianca Belair. Nash Carter apologizes for photo that led to WWE release. Former NXT Tag Team Champion Nash Carter, also known as Zachary Wentz, has made his first comment since being released by WWE. Carter was released by WWE last month following social media posts made by his estranged wife Kimberly, who alleged that Carter was physically and emotionally abusive towards her during their marriage. Lee also tweeted a photo of Carter doing what appeared to be a Nazi salute while sporting a mustache similar to Adolf Hitler. Although Carter was kept on NXT TV despite Lee's abuse allegations, he was quickly released by the company after the Hitler photo surfaced on social media. On Monday, the 28-year-old Carter apologized for the photo and wrote that he's ashamed of his behavior. The full statement can read, quote, "A statement by Zachary Green. No words can truly describe how ashamed and apologetic I am for my conduct in the photograph. There is no excuse for such behavior and I take full responsibility for my actions and ask for forgiveness. This picture was taken in 2015, a time where I was uneducated on the topic and therefore didn't understand the magnitude of how hurtful it was. In 2020, someone was trying to extort me by threatening to post it on social media. I sent it to my wife to discuss the situation. Apparently, she kept it and then decided in retaliation for the filing of the divorce to post it on social media. Regardless of how the photograph came to light, there is still no excuse for my actions. Over the past month, I've taken time to reflect on my conduct, to which I express my utmost remorse and regret. I have spent time off social media to refresh and re-educate myself about the horrors of the Holocaust. I truly do hope that this situation will teach and bring awareness to the horrific tragedy that took place so that something like this will never happen again. I can assure you, this is not who I am or what I represent as a human being, and I feel it's never too late to educate and better yourself. If you are ever in the Orlando/Maitland area, take some time to visit the Holocaust Memorial Resource and Education Center of Florida, where you can learn about the history and depth of what took place. It was incredibly eye-opening and impactful experience that teaches the importance of this history. So what are your thoughts on today's Wrestling News Roundup? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestling Inc. and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.